Hi, I'm Rick Zanotti.
And I'm Harold Muliati.
And today we've got a great guest, somebody who will actually maybe change the way you think about what you're doing. Her name is DL Merlin. She's a great voice talent, and I want to surprise you about a couple of things about her when we get her on. Here we go. Welcome to Sounding Great, a podcast dedicated to you, your voice, your recordings, your audio, how you present yourself and how people perceive you. Sounding great because you can. And we are back, and we've got with us today DL Merlin. Now, she goes by D, and I'm going to embarrass her a little bit, not on purpose. D is a voice talent. She's, from what I gather, pretty successful. But I talked to her yesterday. We had a really nice conversation, and she's been doing this less than 2 years. And in 2 years, I never would have guessed that. I figured she's been doing this 10, 20 years, whatever. Very experienced, been through it all. She has a great website, really good samples of what she does. Less than 2 years. So pay attention today, because he is one of those people who, out of nowhere, can come and make a big difference to the work she kind of does. And I think that was great. After we talked yesterday, D, I was going, you're a great motivator for anybody who really wants to do something and hasn't really thought about it or half-assed thought about it. You did it. And so good for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm a big believer in the do.
The do is good. So we call you Do instead of D.
There you go.
It's like Do Merlin. Yeah. Well, Merlin is full of magic and stuff. So we figured you're magical. It's a good thing.
That's true.
Well, D, you and I had a really nice conversation yesterday. We found out we had things in common. For example, D, well, I wasn't in the Air Force, but she was in the Air Force, and she was a jet mechanic, a jet engine mechanic. That's a pretty cool thing in and of itself. Mm-hmm. Before that, she taught English in South America, in Guayaquil, Ecuador. I taught English in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I was going, wow, what are the odds? And we both taught at the same exact school, Berlitz. Berlitz is a very famous language learning school. Now, not that many people. You're the only person I've ever met who actually taught at Berlitz, and that I know of. And it's just an interesting thing, because that was kind of how we got some of our training, background by fire. They put you in front of a lot of people and you talk, and you have to teach them English by showing pictures and going through this method. It's kind of like, what's that? Rosetta Stone. It's kind of like that, the method they use, very similar. You see a picture and you go, bambino, yeah, bambino. What's this? Bambina, yeah, bambino. And it works. And it does work to a certain point. And then you went off, you got married, lived in Germany a while, you were stationed there, came back. You were a teacher for a lot of years.
Yep, 20 years.
20 years, wow. So,
yep.
And then you decided, I'm going to do voiceover.
Yep, it was a lot easier than kids, just saying.
I can believe that one. But what I love about what you did is you decided, and you just did it. And you did it without, I don't know how you did it. You just did it. And I love how far you've gone in such a long time. And that's, a lot of people have been trying to do voice for 5, 10 years. And they go, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Or I don't know what are people doing wrong to you, because you did it right.
I don't know if they're necessarily doing it wrong, except that they probably didn't get the right training. And am I allowed to give a plug to where I did my training?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, Gravy for the Brain is a really great organization that not only do they have the training, you can get certificates, they have mentoring, they genuinely care about your success. And that's so nice. Even today, almost 2 years later now, a year and a half, I still get live mentoring through Gravy for the Brain.
That's great. That's pretty good. Now, is this an online program?
It is online.
Uh,
They're out of Great Britain, and
huh.
but they have. I think they were in. Gosh, I'm going to say the wrong number, so I apologize. But it's over 20 countries, and they
Oh,
have big group areas. So they have Gravy for the Brain Canada. They have Gravy for the Brain, like the Australia and New Zealand area. All the Spanish speakers are Lantum, and there's a Gravy for the Brain. Awesome. They have Gravy for the Brain Arabica or Arab speakers. And they just went into Brazil this year.
huh.
So
That's pretty good.
I
I
think
like
it
the
is
name.
so exciting that these two guys that just had a real passion for helping voiceovers in the voiceover community started this thing. They're not even very old. I think if they're 5 or 6 years old, I'm probably lying,
Hmm.
you know?
That's really good.
So it might be more than six, but it's not too far in the past. They've been doing their job of voicing and all their producing and stuff like that they do for years and years and years. But Gravy for the Brain, their brainchild here, and I think it's because their heart is always for the voiceover talent to do the very best that they can do.
That's great. It's great. And we were talking about how this community is one of the best communities for people to get to know each other, help each other. And I have known voice talents throughout the years, 3 decades, who are more than willing to help others, to recommend others. I've met some great voice talents from other voice talents, and I'll say, do you know anybody who's like a male voice talent? I need a good male voice talent, and that's how I met Matt Baker
Oh,
through a voice
nice.
talent friend of ours, and Matt was just kind of starting out in voiceover. He had done a couple of years already, but he was fairly new at it, and he was great. And I've seen him over the last probably 12 years really, really just come out of his whatever show he was never really in. He's getting better and better. But that's the beauty of it, watching people evolve and grow. And yet I've never really met anyone who wasn't willing to recommend someone else, which I find interesting. And they do it many times without even asking. It's a tight
Yeah,
community, and I think people help
it
each
is.
other.
It
Now,
is.
I had a
I've already
question.
gone out to other. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I had a question for you that I'd been wanting to ask, and this relates. It's a bit of an inconsequential one, I suppose, but it does relate to voice and your background. Now, as a jet engine mechanic, do you say turbine or turbine?
Uh, it's a turbine engine.
Turbine engine. Gotcha.
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
kind of leads into another thing because this is something that we found that people have different ways of approaching. How do you make sure that you're going to pronounce the stuff in a voice job that how do you make sure that you're going to pronounce words, particularly important terms, correctly?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Harold. The I check online. There are great sites out there. Forvo.com is one, and I hit up Google, but Google is a lot of times it's other people's opinion
Hmm.
of how it sounds. And I especially do this with Spanish because I'm not a native Spanish speaker. I just know how to speak Spanish. So sometimes I don't know how to pronounce it. So I hit up other people in the community and say, or other people I know who speak Spanish. But in Puerto Rico they might say it one way. In Spain they might
Hmm.
say it another way. Where I learned it in Ecuador it might be another way. So I kind of get what's the general whatever. And I also need to know what the client wants. Does the client want it to be if from a Canada perspective or United States perspective, for example, do I say process or do I say process? You know?
Right. And how
That's
do you usually how do you get them to give you the correct pronunciations? Because we've heard, some people will want written documents that say the pronunciation guide info. Some people want recordings. Sometimes people will just want someone that they can ask specifically for whatever word it is.
Oh, if the client hasn't specifically told me how they want something pronounced, then I'm searching for it on my own. Then they catch it in an edit and they'll say, well, I'd really rather it pronounced
mm,
this way. and then I go back and do the edit.
Yeah, because even
And that happens to me with British when I do a British accent.
Mm.
I have a wonderful author who wrote a very sweet World War II romance, and she wanted me to do all these different British characters. So I would have to do RP, I'd have to do Cockney, I'd have to do whatever. And so she would listen, and as I would say different things for different characters, she'd say, well, I really need this character to sound more, like he's South London. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and book reading is its own peculiar niche, because in a lot of cases you might not need to do so much accents, because they might, for other kinds of VO, they'll probably just find someone with that accent. But for books, because you're reading the whole book, you kind of have to do it.
Yeah, the protagonist was American, so she spoke with an American accent. But her mother and her father, and it was a World War II thing, so it happened in Europe. So there was a French uncle, and the author wanted me to do all of the accents. She did like a 25-minute audition of me.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Just to make sure I could do all the accents. I'm like,
now you've done, I think, was it 12 audiobooks?
Yeah.
12. That's no slacking feat. Audiobooks are a little more tedious, as you know, to do. There's a lot of editing. There's a lot of work. How do you prepare yourself to do an audiobook? Do you just have to set a lot of time up? And of course, how do you keep your throat from getting tired after reading so much?
Most authors or publishers give me a long time frame to finish a book. So one day I may do a paragraph, and one day I may do 5 chapters. Just depends on how I feel. Yeah. But I do have to make it sound consistent. So if I've got kind of a scratchy throat or something like that, and I need to do a girl who's like 20, I can't do that on that day, but I can do all the guy characters that day. So
that's funny. And you were telling me also that a lot of the work you get is to do little girls, little kids.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, it's like, little up, you did a great job.
Oh, and I missed it earlier, but actually Heather Foster had dropped in the comments, and she said, Dee is amazing, and she put a whole bunch of clapping emojis.
Oh, that's great.
She's wonderful, yeah. And speaking about giving referrals back and forth, she just gave me a wonderful referral that I'm hoping propels me a little farther along with Spanish, because I don't get as many Spanish jobs. I've done a couple of public service announcements, and I've done a book in Spanish, but I haven't got as many Spanish jobs as it would be really cool to have. So
no, that would be. That's fun. Yeah, Heather's great. Yeah. She's a lot of fun too, and she's so fun. And she's been in this like 6-7 years, not that long either. Again, she's getting to the top very fast, and she does an incredible amount with reading and everything else. Yeah, Heather's great. It's hard not to be in Heather's corner. That's what we say.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. She's a great person to be around. She's so positive, and she's got so many great ideas. And like you said, this community is like that. They just share all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, there's so many communities that aren't like that. They're going to stab you in the back.
That's true. And you know what? We don't have the ad running today. We didn't run it. I just realized that. We were going to, for people who are interested in some training, you have it local or no?
No.
Okay. We'll have to run that later. But anyway, when you first got into this, when you decided I want to do voiceover, and what prompted you to do, of all things, voiceover? Were people saying, yeah, you got a good voice, or you can really do characters, or you're funny? What made you get into voiceover?
I started reading children's books for my grandchildren because, from a military family, our children also ended up joining the military, and they're all over the world. And I wanted to have bedtime stories for my grandchildren to listen to their Nana wherever they were at, if they were in England or, out on the West Coast or wherever. So I started a YouTube channel, and I have both English and Spanish books. children's books, of course, on my YouTube channel, and so that they could listen anywhere. And then people were like, hey, why don't you do adult books? And I'm like, okay. And somebody said, and I saw an ad for Gravy for the Brain, and I just I popped on one day, and it was so exciting. And Hugh and Peter from Gravy for the Brain are so welcoming that I absorbed it. And then the next month, I thought, well, I know a little something. And they said, well, people were saying, go apply on ACX for books. And I'm like, okay. So, here I was like a little kindergartner, and applied for a bunch of books. And I got every single one.
Wow, that's great. That is good. So what was your first experience reading a book? What did you think?
This is hard work.
It is. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, what do you edit with?
I use a free program.
Like Audacity or something?
Audacity, yep.
Yeah.
I use Audacity.
Audacity, for free, you get quite a bit.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go to Audition, though, because now Heather and I were chatting earlier, and she was like able to drop in videos and do the sound underneath it and stuff like that, which I do in Audacity. So I'm like,
Audition is good. It's getting a little buggy. That's my only concern. I've been using Audition for years, but it still works pretty well. And we have used that feature where you drop in a video. You can look at the audio, you can sync it, you can pull the audio out, you can modify it. There's a lot of things you can do that's pretty cool.
It's a good feature, which does cause it to crash sometimes, but you work with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been having a lot of crashes on the Mac side, so I don't know if that's normal. And we know some of the people who work at Adobe, so we were going to talk. We had a rant about 2 weeks ago about Adobe, going, "Come on, guys, let's get this fixed up." I mean, when your waveform disappears, often it's like kind of hard to record when you don't know what you're recording, can't see it, and the levels go away, metering, and they're on. Guys, that's a bug. So, but we'll get them. Like I said, we're going to have. I'm going to invite him on pretty soon. Jason Levine, he's the worldwide evangelist for Audition and Premiere and everything, and he's great. I know Jason. He does a wonderful job, and we're just going to ask him. We're not going to put him on the spot. We're just going to go, "What's going on? Help!" Little things. Maybe I'll talk privately to him, but it's a thing. But no, Audition's a great tool.
Yeah, we still use it quite a lot.
It's a main tool.
We use it enough to know our gripes with it. Let's put it that way.
SoundForge is pretty good too, but I like Audition better. Though SoundForge is not bad. We used that for about 10, 15 years doing voiceovers and stuff and training for all sorts of pieces. But yeah, Audition's great. I don't think you would go wrong with it. Audacity's good for what you're doing right now. It's fine. It can handle everything.
It's really great. It's really great for audiobooks. In the aspect that I just don't need anything fancy. I just need it to record my voice. Right. It's easy to edit in it. It was this really low learning curve. People are like, "Oh, I just don't understand Audacity," and I'm like, "This is one of the most simple audio tools possible." Yep. So if you're just getting started in voiceover, don't spend a lot of money on stuff. If you're going to ask me that question, what's my advice to new voiceovers? Is don't spend a lot of money on stuff when you're getting started, but recognize that you need a quality mic and you need a quality recording space.
Yeah, and you got yourself a very good mic. You spent probably about $300, and you're using the Sennheiser MK4, which is one of my favorites. I love that mic. Yeah. It's a very good, clean, solid mic, and it looks good. It's a nice looking mic to boot. Not a bad choice. A lot of people want to go cheap on the mics to start. That's the worst place you want to go cheap. Don't go get a cheap computer. You don't need much in a computer usually, but you do need a good mic. At least something, spend $200 to $500. I think that's the sweet spot somewhere. And there's a lot of good mics at $300, which you can't go wrong with. They're professional mics. They sound really good. And in some respects, they're better than the really expensive mics because you don't need a perfect studio. Whereas with with the Neumann, some of the Neumanns, especially expensive ones, if you don't have a really, really, really good studio, it's going to pick up every heartbeat you have, almost. They're very sensitive. And so, yeah, I find that the $300 to $500 mics are probably right around the best ones. I've got $1,000 ones and more, but I still go back more often than not to those mics. The one I'm on right here is the Sennheiser 416, the MKH 416. This is a very common voiceover mic. It's a great mic. And what's nice about this one is for about $900, $950 now, I think, you get a mic that sounds almost great for everybody. It's such a good mic. And, Sennheiser just makes darn good mics. Yeah, so you can't go wrong. So yeah, I think you chose a good mic. I've heard the recordings you've made, and they sound really good. I wouldn't have guessed that was an MK4. I thought you might have been on a 416 or something. So it sounds really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a process, let me tell you.
Yeah.
When I first started, some things I have on my website, I keep only because of sentimentality. But sometimes I recognize that the sound quality from my room, or I was using an older mic and not so good. But some of them are like really cute. Like one I did with my granddaughter, and we're in her bedroom closet reading a book and recording her. So the sound isn't like really wonderful, but it's so cute.
But it's fun. Hey, actually, closets are pretty good for people. I'm surprised how many people work out of their closets, and they do work. It's pretty amazing. I actually went into my closet yesterday in the bedroom, and I went, So it's quiet, not a sound coming out of that place. So I didn't record anything, but I was just going, that'd be fun to just try this one day, just for the heck of it. I've never worked in the closet, but I was going, that might be fun just to see how it sounds, because there's no real reflection coming out of things. And it could be just a fun experience. The closet's sort of full of
Just
stuff.
goes to show, voiceovers really are the boogeymen in the closet.
That's right.
I actually one time had an audition. I so wanted it. It was for a podcast or a newscaster for U.S. News. I think it was U.S. News. Anyway, and I was away on a ski vacation, but I was staying in a youth hostel. This just happened, 5-6 months ago, and I was in this bunk bed, so I put these like blankets down the side of the bunk bed, and then I built this pillow fort inside the bunk bed little cavity that I was at. Yeah. And I mean, I got like negative 65 dBS in that thing.
Wow. That's great.
That was amazing in my little cave in my bunk bed.
So what do you do now? You just carry the bunk bed with you wherever you go? This is my portable sound studio.
Yeah, that would work. But I did another one. I got another one. It was for a video game, and I didn't have a bunk bed. I was at a regular hotel then, and I went in the closet, but it was one of those closets that had like the big roomy whatever. Oh. So it was super boom. Yeah, it was super boomy, and I was like, oh my God. I didn't get that job either.
Didn't get that one. Yeah, it's tough. And it's tough because sometimes you're just in the wrong place. I tell you, if you want to spend another $300, and if you travel a lot, get the Harlan Hogan portable voice booth. It's great. Hogan. Harlan Hogan, he's amazing. And he's in his 70s, 75 right now, I think. His voice was so beautiful. It's still not bad. But he's done some great work all over the place. But his little porta booth is, I don't know if Harold's looking up at it right now. I heard him typing.
Oh, that would be cool.
This is what they look like. As you can see, they're quite small, but it's just enough to sort of envelop the throw of your voice and kind of clamp down on those reflections.
Now, he designed it for the Sennheiser 416, which is what he used, but it can work with any mic. So but originally it was for the 416 because that's his main mic, I guess, or one of his main mics. But he also created a mic that really sounds well, and he designed it specifically to sound even better with women. It's for everybody. But he always said women have a harder time with mics, especially if they have higher voices. But it is called the, I think it's the VO1.
The VO1.
The VO1 by Marshall Electronics. and they label it as the world's best voiceover mic. And you know what? He may well be right. It really does sound pretty good. And it's about $300, $350, something like that.
Something like that.
Pretty good mic.
Well, I don't have. My voice is really low.
Yeah, so you can use almost any mic then. You're good. But no, that little porta booth or whatever you called it. What is it called? Porta booth?
It is called the porta booth.
The porta booth. I think it's got 2 versions of it too. It really does sound great. I've heard recordings he did for CNN, and then they called him up on a Friday, and he was traveling in a hotel, and they go, "Oh, we need this," and he goes, he said, "Not a problem." He gets his porta booth out, sits down in front of the mirror or whatever, records it with his Sennheiser, and he's done. And they go, "Oh, thanks so much for going back to the studio." He goes, "You're welcome."
They didn't need to know he was in a Holiday
No, and he
Inn,
played
right?
both, and he said if you could tell the difference, they couldn't. So that was pretty amazing. It's
Nice.
those are great little tools.
Mm.
And
Awesome.
no, I've heard your recordings. You sound really good, and your voice is really nice. And I have heard your little kid voices, and you do those really well.
I think I only have 1 or 2 on my website, but I audition for them a lot, and then I get them. So I've been a little girl on a 911 call. I've been a little Japanese girl where I'm the cheerleader. Those are always fun.
Now, how did you get your accents? Did you just have a good ear for picking up everybody's? People who teach language usually are pretty darn good at just picking up any accent out there. Is that what you did?
I practice a lot too. And I go, since I've traveled a lot too. Like I just came back from Edinburgh. And I drive my husband crazy because every time somebody says something, I'm repeating it so that I can get how they said it. And I'm like, he's like, can you just not experience life without repeating it? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to get any better if I don't practice.
That's right. That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, but accents are fun.
I like it a lot, and that's where I got a bunch of my first books because I was willing to do all the different accents. But I've done straight books like my first book was a real estate book. Actually, they hired me for one, and they're like, "Oh, this was a really great audition, but we really want you to do this real estate book." And I'm like, "Okay."
That's funny. Well, I just did some public service announcements too for a county out here, and the first one I did, they went, "No, you sound like a professional." What do you want? They said, "We want it really conversational." Oh, all right. And that means you go from here up to here. So you're moving your voice up a little bit. And it was sort of like, as I did it, I go, it just doesn't sound right, but okay, they're happy. They liked it, but I wasn't that happy with it. I was like, don't you want something that sound? No. They wanted it totally conversational. It happens. Sometimes you don't know what they want until they hear it, and then they go, can you change that? Sure. That's fine.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And I had to do them in Spanish too. And I hadn't done Spanish in ages, but it wasn't hard. It was just, I kept saying, you do realize that my accent is more of an Argentine accent, which is not the same as your Central American or Mexican accent. And they went, it's okay. As long as you're happy with that, we're good. I tried to keep it really generic, but Argentines say, je, the je sound, jo. And that's a little different. Vaya, no, not vaya con Dios, vaya con Dios. So, and I didn't trying to do it the other way. I just did it the way I speak, figuring, okay, well, they said they're fine with that. Most people don't mind, but it is just enough different. I know people from Venezuela, they go, cho fui al negocio, cho. It's like CHO. It's a different, or cho. It's a very cut YO sound. So everybody's a little different. But no, the accents are fun. Let me guess, you repeat commercials when you hear them too.
Oh, claro que sí.
Yeah.
Of course I do.
Yeah, because that's the most fun.
I really drive my husband nuts. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
I drive my wife crazy. I drive my
I'm
wife
like, I could
crazy.
do that
Yeah.
commercial. And he's like, and I do it. And he's like, can you not just watch the commercial? I'm like, oh, okay.
That's so funny. I do that at home with my wife all the time. We're saying, you deserve a break today at McDonald's. And she goes, oh, there he goes again. Oh, what a feeling. Toyota. And so I'll just start repeating the commercial. I find it fun. And then you can start imitating the commercials. I think Harold does it too. He just doesn't talk about it. His sister gave us information. Yeah, his sister gave us information on it. He does a lot more than we think.
I do a lot more stuff like that when I'm tired, I guess. So usually earlier in the day when I'm still here, I'm not giving Rick the 100% that I give when I'm all tired and kind of a little loopy, I guess.
Yeah, we're trying to really work him to death now, so that when he starts doing his voice, he's fine. He's perfectly fine.
Perfect. He's right in the zone. I got you.
Yep. Well, seriously, Dee, I love your spirit and I love what you've done. And I'll tell you, in the time you've done it, you're at the top already. You really are. You've done a great job. And it's just, to me, it just warms my heart to see people do that, to come out and not let any obstacle get in the way. That takes something. That takes a good spirit, and you've got it. So congratulations on that. Like we said in the beginning, keep up the good work, and you're welcome to come back on any time. Or if you want to come back and do something with us, just come on back. Just give us a call.
Oh yeah,
we'd love to have you.
I'm working on a new project, getting better at, and voiceover, like anything, you have to practice a lot because every genre is different. Whether you're doing games or narration or medical or e-learning, they're all different. And I'm really getting into audio description, which I'm an advocate for accessibility. And I also read for a podcast for Airs LA for the blind. Which, audio description is for the sight impaired. So maybe when that gets a little bit more off the couch and into the computer, we can maybe chat about audio description.
That sounds good because it's not something a lot of people do. So that'd be great. And that helps a lot of people. I know a lot of people who read LibriVox, and they do it again. They go to a lot of people who are sight impaired. And that seems to help a lot. The only thing I don't like about LibriVox is people, they do something really odd. You may have a 10, 20 chapter book and you got 20 readers. It's just a little bit odd. I would find that distracting, but so I have one friend who does books for them, and he's now asking for his own books. So he's doing his own because he thought reading one chapter, and he's got great gear. So when he gets up there, it sounds like a real pro. And then next guy comes in and goes, "Hi, this is chapter 2." And it's like, oh, no. So you just kind of ruined the book from what he did. This is chapter 2.
You've got the same character, but suddenly his voice sounds like this.
Yeah.
So that's where I think LibriVox, the people do it for free, and he likes to volunteer his time doing it. But he's starting to look now to do audiobooks for pay because he's gotten good enough, and he's done a lot of voiceover. But it is interesting because reading one chapter, and then it's like you start chapter 1, all of a sudden I come in on chapter 2, then you do chapter 6. If even, sometimes you only do one chapter. It's a little weird.
I'm not familiar with LibriVox. I'll have to look it up.
It's kind of fun. I mean, it's all public domain books, so I wouldn't call them royalty-free books, but they're kind of like that. So people just go back into the classics or other things, and they just read them for people. It's kind of nice. I've heard some that are pretty well recorded, some that are just, oh my gosh, please don't. Some of them are bad. Yeah, some are just like, no, you're not doing the book any justice. And I guess you get choices on books, but it's not always sometimes the best voice for the right book, etc. But it is fun. But no, keep up what you're doing. And Dee, we will see you next time then.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one. And if you're watching the show, please subscribe. We're going to have a real short show in a couple minutes on some training for voiceover. So stay tuned for that. We'll give you some resources. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Next week, we've got George Washington III. He's actually a friend of Heather's. He's a great guy. We've known George for about 10, 12 years already. Wonderful human being. Great voice talent. And he's also a radio engineer, which is pretty cool. And the week after that, we've got Matt Baker. We've got great lineup of people from get-go to now. It's great. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
And that's a wrap.